Now, we did mention earlier that the African Union Summit sought to elect a new Commission chairperson. However, it wrapped up in the Rwandan capital, Kigali, without appointing a new administrative head. The vote has been suspended as none of the candidates won the necessary two-thirds majority. Let's discuss this further. And joining me from Johannesburg is Aditi Lal-Bahadur, a foreign policy program manager at the South African Institute of International Affairs. So, having failed to elect a new AU Commission chair to replace Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, what does this say about leadership capabilities on the continent, or were there other factors at play?
I think it has less to do with the fact that there's, a lack of leadership capability, more than it actually has to do with a number of other things. I think that essentially what we're looking at is a situation where this past tenure of Dr. Dlamini-Zuma has exposed some significant challenges regarding the power structure that is vested in her office. I think that we've seen that she's come under severe criticism for being ineffectual and for not living up to expectations, but a large proportion of that actually is related to the powers that are vested in her office and her ability to be able to effect any kind of change. And I think, speaking very specifically to the question of leadership, I think is less about capacity than it is more about perhaps the timing and the surprise. In many instances, there was a level of unpreparedness around the fact that she could choose not to continue to sit for a second term. You must remember that the previous administration under Jean Ping stayed for 2 terms, and I think that there was this expectation that she would also stay on for a second term.
Well, a significant number of countries felt the candidates on offer were not up to the task. What's your reaction to this, and do you have some alternative candidates in mind?
I wouldn't be able to presume to refer alternative candidates, but I think that there was a sense. I was in Ethiopia last month, and I think there was a sense even from then that the caliber of candidates wasn't quite up to scratch. I think that there was a sense that even though all 3 of the candidates, one is from Equatorial Guinea, another from Uganda, and another from Botswana, they have all served in their foreign ministries quite extensively and as ministers of foreign affairs. There was a sense that they weren't quite of the caliber as the predecessors. You must know that the first person in this role was actually Alpha Omar Konare. And being a former president, head of state, there's a sense that there was a diminishing sort of responsibility attached to this role, or a diminishing profile attached to this role. And I don't think that was something that the leaders of the African Union wanted to convey in terms of choosing a successor for this position.
So overall, Aditi, who do you think the AU summit, or what do you think the AU summit achieved that is of benefit to the continent?
Well, I think the most significant achievement for this summit actually really is the decision on the financing agreement for the African Union. You'll know that actually up to 76% of the African Union is funded by external partners. That's often the West and northern donor countries. And that is perceived to have an adverse influence in terms of the decision-making and operations of the African Union. And so for a long time, there's been a real drive to push for financial independence from the African Union. And at this summit, there was an agreement by heads of state that they would impose a special levy on imports. I think it was 0.2% of countries' import levies will be divested to the African Union, which would increase the budget for the African Union by $1.2 billion, which is, I think, is about sort of 3 times what the current budget is. So that's a significant change, because that obviously is going towards funding 25% of peace operations that the African Union will undertake, and 75% of its administrative operations, which is a significant change from the way in which things have been done in the past. And hopefully that will mean that there's a higher degree of autonomy that comes from the African Union.
All right, Aditi, we appreciate those insights. Thanks very much for joining us. That's Aditi Lal-Bahadur, live for us in Johannesburg.